Let's use proportions to make predictions. Remember that a proportion is a comparison of two ratios. So if I would have the ratio A over B, the comparison would be that it's equal to the ratio of C over D. Now to solve proportions, we cross multiply. So B times C would be equal to A times D. Let's jump in. There are 860,000 people in a city with 45 fitness centers. If another city is proportional to this one and has 475,000 people, how many fitness centers should they have? Let's round that to the nearest whole number, since you can't have part of a fitness center. Now, we are comparing two different cities, right? So we'll just call it City A and City B. That's fine. And we are comparing people to fitness centers. Now, it doesn't matter. Like, I put A on the left, B on the right. That doesn't matter. People on top, fitness centers on the bottom. There are multiple ways to set up proportions. The key is to be consistent, which is why I write down, right? I label the positions on my proportions so that I don't have any mistakes on where things go. So let's look at my first city. We have 860,000 people, 860,000, and I have 45 fitness centers, right? So that's one city. Boom. The other city has 475,000 people. Well, people go in the numerator, so 475,000, and we don't know how many fitness centers. We'll call that the unknown F. Okay, so now we can cross multiply. So when I cross multiply, I get 860,000 F equals, when I cross multiply 45 times 475,000, I get 21,375,000. To solve, I divide both sides by the coefficient of F, which is 860,000. That means F equals 24.854, and it goes on and on and on. If we're rounding to the nearest whole number, I'm going to look at the 8. 8 tells me to round up. So this is the same as 25 fitness centers. So if these two cities were proportional, the second city with 475,000 people should have 25 fitness centers. And now let's go to our second example. We have State A with a population of 9.2 million and 420 schools. State B has a population of 4.7 million and 308 schools. Okay, so notice we have two states and we have two full sets of information. This is where it can get a little bit confusing. So let's now read the rest of it. If State B was proportional to State A in population to schools, how many schools should State B have? Round to the nearest whole number. Okay, so let's think this through in our proportion. I have State A, I have State B. We're talking about population compared to schools. Sometimes, if we're given all information, like I could fill in all four pieces, but that's not what we're trying to do, then sometimes it makes more sense to stop and say, what's the question? How many schools does State B have? If it's proportional, right? So schools, State B, that's the unknown. We're trying to say, if we know that State A has 9.2 million and 420 schools, we know that State B has 4.7 million people. If B was proportional to A, meaning if this proportion is correct, then what should X be? We know the actual, but this is what it should be, okay, if they're proportional. That's the idea. And now we solve this proportion. Okay, so cross multiply. 9.2x equals 420 times 4.7 gives me 1974. We're going to divide both sides by 9.2 because that's the coefficient of x. And x gives me 214.565. Let's keep going. And because it says round to the nearest whole number, we are talking about number of schools. We look at one decimal place past. 5 tells me to round up. So State B should have 215 schools. It actually has 308. So State B has way more schools than it needs to if it's proportional to State A. So maybe that's the data they need to close some schools. Or maybe they're saying we have a better student to teacher ratio or whatever. But this is how we can use proportions to make predictions and to compare with what we have.